Hello, how are you doing?
All right, mate, can you hear me?
Yeah, all good, all loud and clear. So this is the easy part. This is where I let you speak and I sit back for 10 minutes. So how did your day go? What was the plan?
Well, first, can you just drop me the link for where the actual show is so I can share it? Because there's going to be quite a few people that I know that want to hear everything about it.
Yeah, 2 seconds. What am I going to do? Why is this fucking thing working? Hang on, let me take this phone number off. Right, 1 minute. Let me take that off so nobody called. Nobody called.
So while you're sending me that over, I can let everyone know. Basically, I've been up since about 5 to 5 this morning, and I went all the way to London, and that meant that the first train I caught was about 6:47 this morning, and obviously I've been pretty busy, and I've literally walked in the door because my train got back at about 10 to 7, so I've literally walked in the door at about 8 o'clock. I'm not far from the train station, shoveled down the cold tea that was sat on the table waiting for me, and I'm here to give you the exclusive on this story. But I did, if you can pop the link for the show.
Get it. 1 second, I don't want to do it
private chat.
It'll bleed over. 1 second. Right. 1 second. You lot that are watching it over there, can you send us a link some way so that I can send it to Mark? That's great. Cheers. And
then I'll pop it in the, and then I'll begin the full tale of today's craziness. And it has been an odd day, and people might be shocked that I'm about to say this, but there's good and bad. So today was definitely not all bad, and I've actually got a lot of positive things to say about the actual event itself, because I went there, and I went there actually not to end up in the situation I was in. I actually went there because I wanted to go and support what the day was for. Now the whole idea, right? You've just shared that YouTube thing. So let me just pop this on my Telegram, and then I'll
they'll pile in. Yes,
I'm going live right now with Reverend Simon Sideways to discuss the Tommy demo and my ejection from the event. Right, I'll share that to Gab.
Rev, you are an imbecile even after all this time, and it's as simple as that. And you. Well, nice. That's excellent. It's nice to be called an imbecile.
that's a friendly
yes,
friendly message. Well, look, as I said, I went there, and I didn't actually go there sort of like in any way in bad faith. I actually went there because people had said, like, I realized that Tommy wasn't going to be there, and the idea was to go there for Peter Lynch. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of background about the Peter Lynch thing. So obviously he's now not with us. He died in prison. He got a scandalous prison sentence for something you should never, ever be jailed for, a slap on the wrist offense. He shouted at police officers. You know, he's a 61-year-old man that shouted at police officers. There's no way you should be going to prison for that. Now, the organization I'm involved with, we have been raising funds for the families of those political prisoners. So we've been raising money for people who either said things on social media, were arrested for non-crimes like shouting at the police, or were given heavy sentences for minor infractions like kicking a police van or pushing a shopping trolley into a fence or throwing a traffic cone. And so far we've raised, I think, just over £15,000, and we've started distributing that money to families of prisoners that we think are particularly wealthy and that have worthy, and have reached out to us and said, look, we need some help. You know, the primary breadwinner in the house has gone to prison, and the family need some money coming up to Christmas. They need financial help. So we've actually written, well, I wrote personally to the family of Peter Lynch a few days ago and sent that first class saying, would you like help with the funeral bills? We're all really heartbroken at what you're going through. We think Peter was a good man. We don't believe he committed any crime, and we're here to help if you need us. And we've been helping other people. So When this event was advertised, people were saying to me, will you go down? Will you come down and will you join it? And a few people reached out to me, both people who were very close to me and other people, and said, look, Mark, you've got to start coming to these events. Come down and see what you think. So I said, right, this is a big issue. And everybody, whether you're a Tommy fan, whether you're a fan of me, whether you're a fan of Sargon, doesn't matter who you're a fan of, everybody should be there saying enough is enough. You know, a 61-year-old grandfather has died, essentially been handed a death sentence, whether he was killed, whether he died, whether he committed suicide, in jail, because he was jailed for shouting at police officers. Ridiculous. We should all be standing together on this issue. So I went down there in good faith, and I didn't go down there to take over the event. I didn't go down there to demand to speak or storm the stage. In fact, I didn't go anywhere near the stage. I stood quite far back behind the Churchill statue. I had no interest in causing any bother, trying to be anything more than a face in the crowd. Now, when I got there, I was actually quite surprised. I was recognized on the train on the way down. I was spoken to very warmly by people there. By the time the march set off, I'd been recognized by several people, asked for little media interviews, which I was happy to give. And when we got down there, we weren't doing anything untoward. We stood there and we unfurled a banner. Now, this wasn't a big banner advertising Patriotic Alternative or anything like that. All it was a banner that called for Sam Melia, the husband of Laura, to be freed from jail because he is a political prisoner. It didn't have any PA branding on at all. And we did have some PA leaflets about Sam Melia and also the ones about demographic change. And a lot of people were coming up to me and saying, look, I know who you are, you know, great to see you here. What's your take on all this? And I was just saying what I always say. This swamping mass of migrants that are coming here are going to ultimately lead to us not only becoming a minority in our ancestral homeland, but also becoming second-class citizens, or worse, a hated minority. And people were really, really, you know, warming to that message. And we were talking to people, shaking hands with people. And there was a few people there who I know are not my best friends. And I actually saw one of them. Me and him have had a little bit of an internet beef where we said things about each other. And I actually walked up to him, held out my hand. He initially didn't shake it. We spoke for a while and I said, look, I apologize for my side in this sort of pettiness. You know, I'm an older man. And look, we're all here for the same reason. And eventually we shook hands and we said, look, let's part on decent terms, because I'm not there to cause trouble. I was genuinely, I didn't bring a megaphone. I didn't try to drown out what was going on stage. I didn't boo things that I didn't like, because there were some things there that were a bit objectionable. But you know, I was in line with everything. Then all of a sudden, we noticed like security people sort of massing around us. And before I knew where I was surrounded. And these guys were asking me to leave. And I was like, well, why? And they were like, we can't give you an answer. We won't give you our names. We don't want any trouble, but you've got to leave. And I said, well, look, let us roll up the banner. And they were actually quite friendly. Some of them were very embarrassed to be doing what they were doing. Some of them were quite sheepish. The main guy, he was very, very polite to me. He didn't lay a hand on me. He didn't like try and harm me or muscle me or anything. He was just saying, you've got to leave because we've been told that you've got to go. He was kind of apologetic for that. He asked people not to film him because he was quite, I think he was quite embarrassed, to be fair, that he was throwing out some guy, like, you know, who was doing literally nothing wrong and had turned up in good faith. Some of the security guys spoke to our guys and were like, look, we're absolutely gutted we're having to do this because we like your group. We agree with what, you know, you're doing. And we left. And by leave, they just said, look, you've got to, it was absolutely pointless telling us to leave, because they said, well, all you need to do is cross the road or just stand not on Parliament Square. So once you're one step off the square itself, they had no jurisdiction. And we just stood there with our banner talking to people. But by that time, it started to rain. People were leaving. And, you know, we shook hands with the people who we were with. We gave one little speech. We showed the banner. People gave us a very polite round of applause and we left. And overall, it was a really good day. And I've never been to one of these before. And I was quite apprehensive, to be honest, about going, because I didn't know what I would see. I didn't know what the gulf would be between people who were sort of ethno-nationalists and people at the Tommy event. And I've got some very good things to say about it. I'm not on the show to rubbish it or slag anyone off. To be honest, I would say 95% of the people at that event would be absolutely, welcoming somebody like myself talking about demographic change. They were really good people. There was probably 5,000 to 10,000 people there. And that's a pretty wide-ranging estimate, but it's quite hard to get a total grasp on how many are there. You look in one direction and there's quite a few, another direction there's quite a few, but you're not doing a head count with that many people. But a good turnout. There was a lot of women, a lot of families came. Lovely to see so many flags of the British Isles, but there were a few disappointing things. There was sort of a pervasive smell of weed in the air, which I look. I know that some people do it. I don't like it. And I think it should be kept away from demos. There was a lot of that. I didn't like that. And I repeatedly said to the guys I was with, like, can you smell that? And I'm like, yeah. There was, people there who'd got, big crates of lager and stuff, which again, I don't mind having a drink in the pub beforehand. I'm not a prude, but you shouldn't be walking down the streets with big crates of lager. But one of the most sort of objectionable things that I saw, I mean, there was a few Israeli flags, which I think is ridiculous. I don't think there should be any like foreign flags at a British event, unless maybe you've got a specific foreign speaker and you put the flag up on the stage when that speaker speaks. But the Israeli flags were a bit bad. But one of the things I thought was really odd, they have this guy there called Ricky Doolan, who's a bit of a...
He's a fraud.
And he had these black gospel singers. And I looked at our guys and I said, there's a sort of synergy here between like the mainstream media.
I've caught him out, mate. He's so full of shit. Do you remember the time that he went up against Laura Towler? Yeah. That was an embarrassing moment. That's when I called him something or other and I got binned off. But he's so full of shit. His eyes are brown. And if you look through his social media, you'll see that he's changed his appearance so many times, and he's tried to rinse many people out for money. He's into some religious person at the moment. I think he might be married to his daughters or whatever it is. And they are what hypocritical religious people do, is fleecing their flock for as much as they can get. Now, I wouldn't piss on the guy's teeth if his gums are on fire. I don't think I put that too minimalistic. And I don't like the guy, and I don't like him because he's a charlatan. I don't believe anything he says, and I don't think he's any more of a Christian than, say, for instance, this can of beer over here. I think there's a lot more Christian people that don't need to put it about, but he's worked the book, he's studied the book, and he uses the book to gain money, and that I despise. Also, the fact that people have decided to get that fucking idiot up on stage shows poor judgment. But there again, that's the thing, isn't it? There's many people that get up on that stage that aren't that good or have a really shithouse past. And I wanted to go, but I know that a lot of what goes up on that stage is funded by the same people that fund the opposition to stir up the trouble. And I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I got up there myself and talked about it. So this is why I'm stuck. I want to support a lot of what they're doing there, because I believe when they put a video up about old people being shafted about heating, or when they're talking about rape of women, I agree in all of that, totally. But in years to come, somebody's going to go, well, you got on the same stage with that one, that one, that one, and that one. It's proved out that they've been this, 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 and this. And I'm like, yeah. Especially if you
the thing I found kind of like objectionable is you've got all of these people there, and they've spent a lot of money. I mean, like, my train ticket down there wasn't cheap. You're talking to like 90 quid to get there. And then, if you're taking your family, and that's just for me, if you're taking your family and everything, and you get down there and there's Ricky Doolan up on stage and he's surrounded by black gospel singers, and I just felt for a crowd that was sort of 99% plus white, and they were there to really celebrate Englishness, Britishness. They were there because they're against mass immigration. They're fundamentally against demographic change, and they're against this sort of two-tier policing. And when they get there, they're sort of hit with more multiculturalism on stage than there was in the crowd. And that seemed really jarring for me. And I kind of felt that at these Tommy events, despite the people there really yearning for sort of yesteryear, sort of a better Britain, a Britain when we were homogenous,
go back to a white England where it was actually less criminal and more friendly.
Yeah,
That's pretty much where we are. And this stage is almost like the House of Commons, very unrepresentative of the rest of the country. And do you think that he so desperately doesn't want to be called a racist that he'll throw anybody of any color up there that'll bang on his drum?
Do you know what? I've got to say this about Tommy. I think that Tommy does know. He started to talk now about replacement. And I think he's always known about replacement. Look, the guy's not, people make fun of him and they say he's not that clever, but he's not an idiot. And he's built something that's big, vibrant. People are passionate about him. And I just wish he'd throw off these shackles that are placed all around him.
Another word that people will be saying, but yes, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're totally right. And the thing is, he's not an idiot, but he catches on late. And what he makes sure is it's gone that far enough that what it has, that now I can talk about it, because so many people are talking about it. I'm safe to talk about it. It's not wanting to upset the apple cart. Now, you've been talking about demographic replacement for ages, long before I even had caught onto it, right? And at the beginning, I was like, doesn't feel right. But I was still, how do you say this, programmed, like many. We're not educated, we're indoctrinated in this country and in every other country. And if you look into the people that decided how to work that out, which was the Rockefeller bunch back in the Americans years ago, they were shafting the whole country and shafting the planet. And they had to dumb down the population before the population caught on to what they were doing. Well, that passed all the way through from America to England, all over Europe, and the idea went. And we were dumbed down to a level that we were good enough to be blue-collar workers and not ask too many questions. And we never taught about why and who are we in debt to. We were never asked, like, do you want to know more about politics and how it works? We were just, it was explained to us that it's such a complicated system that you don't need to know about it. It's too complicated for you. Just accept the fact that this is how it works and you vote for these people. We have been dumbed down. Now, many people who failed at school have become, now, as you'll probably find, more involved in this than many of the, I don't want to lose my car, my house, my holidays, and this, that, and the other, the people that really sold into the system. But even these people now are waking up and going, everything around me is changing, and I can't work out why it all feels wrong, and I don't understand it because they've never been able to ask questions, but they know something's wrong. And it's got to that stage now when somebody like you comes along and goes, have you ever worked out that if these people come in at this rate, right, and produce at this rate, and you're producing at this rate, what do you think is going to be the answer? You don't have to give them the answer. They'll go, I don't know. Well, and then you can see the fear because they've got to think. And actually thinking outside the comfort zone is the most frightening thing. Spoke to a guy down, he was a barman, an intelligent guy, been in university and stuff. I said, you ever wondered who we're in debt to? No. And that country's in debt to, and that country, and that country, and that country. And I set him off down the road. And I said, and I went through a load of other stuff. And he went, you can't be right. So we went and watched this thing, JFK to 9/11, which was a good start. And then he went, well, that can't be right. So he did his own research. And then he came out and went, yeah, you were right. That was right. I've done my own research. How the fuck did you know? And I went, well, somebody else put me on the right line. You're not one of these. You can't stumble across this stuff. You have to be brought to it by somebody who found it and somebody was taught. Like, this is what you do, right? This is what I do. And this is why we're about as welcome as thrush in many areas, because people don't want to wake up, right? When you tell somebody that everything they were taught at school and the system that they've believed in all of their life and the structures that they believed in is actually lies, and it was lies to keep you as a good little citizen doing his bit, mainly wanting to get into debt and wanting to be in such a situation that you will work without question for the rest of your life, right? That's the system, right? And when you actually work out this is the case, and you work out that everything about it was a lie, you go through these different stages, which is what I would consider to be like, if you lose somebody you love, you go through all these different grieving stages. When you wake up to the real world that you're in, you go through all these different stages, which are anger, frustration, depression, all sorts. And then you come out the other side pissed off, pretty much. And then you want to do something about it. But so many people don't want to wake up. And I don't know about you, when you actually confront some of these people with this, a lot of them will just immediately want to push back on it, everything you say. No, don't want to believe in it. And then some of them will come back and you go, well, all right, you're right about this. But what about that? And you say, well, this, and this. Go away and have a look. All right. So they go away, come out. You're right about that. But what about this? Because I was one of these. So I know, right? I had a mate, pretty much like yourself, who knew a lot, who fed me slowly. And I pushed as hard against it because I didn't want it to be right. Because if it did, it was fucked. But here we are. So now you're teaching people about the people that actually control the problem, the people that don't want you to go forward, the political system that's controlled, which means you can't get anywhere, the financial system, which is regulated, controlled, and also dodgy. What's your advice to people like that? I mean,
well, I'm not as black pilled as you, and I tell you why. I went today, and as I said, I was a little apprehensive, and I hope I'm being sort of. I hope I'm, because I don't want to trash the event, but I was apprehensive about going. And when I got there was a couple of really nice young lads, and they were giving an interview to sort of some citizen journalist. And I had a big lad with me who's a good friend of mine, and I said to him, look, when they're wrapped up, grab the journalist and get him over here, and I'll say a few words. So this journalist asked me why I was here, and he was like, he was a bit apprehensive about me, actually, because he was like, you're not going to swear, are you? And I was like, no. And he goes, well, look, I'll get demonetized on YouTube if you swear. So please don't. Like, I promise you, I'm not going to swear or say anything wrong. So then he starts asking me what I thought. And I started talking about 2066, demographics, London and Birmingham being lost, the whole country being lost by the 2060s, the fact that no one voted for this, that we are not just going to become second-class citizens, but there's going to be a whole two-tier system that makes us a hated minority. And people in the crowd weren't balking at this. All of a sudden, people went quiet and started looking. And, you know, one of the women who was there, she said, I've not heard a guy speak like this before, but he's right, isn't he? And I had this overwhelming feeling of these people are ready for this message. These people are ready to talk about demographics. They're ready to talk about replacement. They're ready to talk about anti-white discrimination, but no one's talking to them about it. And I felt that amongst that crowd, I'm not going to over egg it, but I would say somewhere around 90%, give or take sort of 5%, maybe as low as 85%, are ready for that conversation. And everybody that heard me talking to the citizen journalists that were interviewing me were really listening, and afterwards came over and said, can I have a card? Have you got information on where I can learn more about you and the things you say? People wanted to know about it. And I kind of feel that today there was 10,000 or so 5 to 10,000 people in Parliament Square who wanted to hear the real truth. And the thing that annoys me is there was people there who wanted to throw me out, not because I was rude, not because I was undermining them, not because I was telling people lies about them or ruining the event, or because I was drunk or drugged up or did something unthinkable, but they actually wanted me out of that event because I was giving their audience the truth that they want to hear. And that is what upsets me. Instead, their audience are being fed some sort of pig swill of gossip singers, and multiculturalism will work if we just get rid of the Muslims, but you know, all these Indians are going to enrich us and all the black people have enriched us, and it's simply not true. Now, we're not saying send everyone back, but what we are saying is we need to stop immigration, and there needs to be a robust remigration policy that ensures that we remain a 95% majority forever, because this is our land. And when we are a majority, we deserve to be treated as first-class citizens because this is our country. And
not last on the pecking order, because we are so low down the pecking order, we don't have a beat, do we?
Exactly. And people wanted to hear that. And that's the disappointing thing. And I'd probably say to Tommy Robinson, you know, it'd be easy for me to come on here and rubbish Tommy Robinson. He wasn't there. He's in legal troubles. And, you know, a lot of people say things like, Tommy, come and debate me, come and debate. He's never going to debate me. But I would say this to Tommy. Tommy, don't debate me. Don't fight me or anything stupid like that. Just call me. I'll give you my address. Come round, meet me, meet my family. My missus will cook us Sunday dinner, and we can just sit down, no cameras, no phones, no secret recordings, just me and you, Tommy. Let's talk about demographics. I'm the guy that's been talking about it for 24 years. Let's stop pretending it's not the big issue when it clearly is. I mean, look, you'd never get a crowd as white as that in London ever. I mean, maybe in the House of Lords, you know what I mean? But basically,
the problem is, Mark, is that he was brought up in an area that was really mixed. I mean, most of his mates were blacks or Muslims or whatever it was. And when you're brought up like that, you consider that to be normal. If he was brought up in my village, which is like the darling buds of May, right? One black guy, and the only foreigners here are the people that work the takeaways, and then they go home. That's it, right? I mean, to me, foreign is Ginger Jim, right? Oh, almost, but it's as white as you could possibly get, right? If he grew up here, then went to London, he would be disturbed by the demographics if he went to Birmingham. But he'll go there and just go, this is normal, and because he's not used to where I am. But I would prefer England to be like this, all of England. Now, that's not to say I don't like people of color, but it's like this. If I want to say I want to change Africa, I want to turn it white, people would lose their fucking mind. If I said I want to change India, right, and I make that totally white, because why not? No problem, right? I mean, let's just outbreed them. The left, the liberals, the wet would lose their fucking mind, because actually they hate their own species and they want them gone. And for some reason, these useless fuckwits, sorry, Mark, I wouldn't swear on your show, but because it's mine, I will.
It's your show, mate.
Right? Because they're absolutely low intelligence. I'm not saying they might pass an IQ test, right? But they're thick ones, right? These people can't work out what's actually in front of them. They can't work out the end result. And also they don't care. And this is something I found out about the non-traditional people. The left, I don't care about my flag, I don't care about my country, is they don't care about the end result of what happens here. They don't give a shit. I'll be dead then. Now, I don't know yourself whether you're an atheist or you're a Christian or whatever it is, but it seems to me that people who are staunch traditionals, they're Christians, they believe in their country, they believe in their history, they're entrenched within their history, they don't want to see any great change. What they want to see is the natural, slow progression, if it was meant to be, if he upstairs meant it to be that way, right? But they don't want to see in 40 or 50 years a massive change that was pushed by a bunch of people from outside this country because they fucking hate us. Because that's the sum of it, right? These people despise us. They despise the people that are coming in here, and then we use them as the Trojan horse. I think we all know who we're talking about. All right. Yeah. And that's the shame, because I have to use code words for all this sort of stuff. But people are getting clued up to it. And the problem is people always get clued up to it a bit late. It's a bit like, oh, that horse is gone. Yeah, it's like not working out that shut the gate first before the horse fucks off. Now, we're watching people come into our country in great numbers, that as they're coming up the gangplank off these taxis called the RNLI and other things, they're doing that to us. They're wearing more expensive clothes than I can afford. They've got a new phone. They've got new trainers, and they despise the country they're coming in from. And also, which we've probably brushed upon, how is it, and I spoke to a liberal about this the other day, I'll give you their answer. How is it that they're all coming in, all these men, but the women and kids are safe? The bullshit answer was, well, they're going to get settled over here and bring them over. I said, and if you think that's the case, you're an idiot. You're an absolute moron. No, they're coming over here and invading army. They'll outbreed us, and they'll get together. They'll get organized crime. They'll infest areas so that we can't be there. They'll bully, they'll dominate, and they'll take over. And that's where we are. And I used to be, what was the word for it? Civnat, I suppose you might have called it at one point. But Civnat is just a natural progression to Ethnat, right? When you know nothing about anything, you would be a liberal, because that's why you've been programmed. And as you get more and more aware, you then become more aware of your diminishing numbers, your culture, the way your culture has been like persecuted, and how it's important to keep hold of your culture and push back this tide of what we're going to call this sea of unnaturalness. These people that don't like us anyway, fuck it. And we've got to push back against that. And the more you become aware of how much actually these people are racist, right, and are prejudiced and are tribal, and how they look down their nose at us and don't like us, then you become, why are they here? Why do I want them here? Why should I celebrate them here? And you get to the point of going, fuck it, I don't want them here. And that's where we are. And I don't make any bones about it now. I'm not here to make any fans. I don't give a fuck what people think of me. But my village, being the liberals that have never been touched by any of this, used to think I was a racist. And you wouldn't believe how many of them now welcome me going, you're right. I'm like, took you long enough, didn't it? I said that was a cold 6-7 years for me out in the wilderness while you lot caught up. But it's nice you're here now. Maybe a bit late, but hey. But yeah, how did you find it? I mean, there's people around your locality that would know what you do. Are they now coming around? Or
I think I would describe this as everyone has their tipping point, and people tend to ignore the problem until it's on their doorstep. And that's one of the reasons we're in the mess we're in, that a lot of people sort of instinctively know what's going on is wrong, but because it's not affecting them right here, right now, they will not do anything about it. And for me, I found that over the years, I've been mocked, I've been ridiculed, people have dismissed things I've had to say, but over time, the vast majority of those people have eventually collared me and said, you know what, mate, I used to laugh at what you used to say, but I've seen it for myself. And I think now there's so much happening that it's not just a trickle of bad news that wakes people up. It's a tsunami. And more and more people that I used to know who didn't agree are becoming amenable. I'll give you an example as well about the kind of stuff that wakes people up. Now, I used to be on YouTube. I'm not obviously on YouTube anymore. I'm on Odyssey, Rumble, and BitChute.
What number did you get up to before they booted you off for being
99,900? It was actually 99.9, and they took it away before I got that little plaque.
That I had to make. They wouldn't give it, and they stopped me going live on my main channel.
Yeah,
well, but yeah,
that's how it was. And I've got a video out this week because I still make my videos. So please, if everyone wants to hear this story, it's really horrific and upsetting, but it's the kind of story we should be informing the public of. So I've got a video, and it's called "Raped to Death," and that might sound like a horrific headline, but it's actually the truth. And it's about an NHS worker, a mother of 3, who ended up going out, having a bit too much to drink, passing out on a park bench, and a Somalian migrant raped her to death. And that's exactly what happened. But I go into more detail in my video. And people might be shocked. Well, they're not going to be shocked because they're watching this. But the press refused to report on this guy's migrant status. They just referred to him as a man from Hounslow. And most papers refused to report on the fact that he was already a convicted sex offender for preying on children and trying to groom them online. Now, these things happen all the time. It's not just once in a blue moon anymore. We are constantly seeing these machete attacks. We're constantly seeing kids stabbing each other, horrific sexual assaults, murders, people fearing to leave their homes. And all of a sudden, when you're living in that environment, it's a lot harder to laugh off, dismiss, or sort of mock the sort of things that we say. So I have seen huge changes in the time that I've been politically active, but these huge changes haven't come about simply because people have assessed the facts. Sadly, the reason they've come about is because things have got so bad, people can't ignore the problem anymore. And that's one of the issues that we face, that people only wake up, at 2 minutes to midnight, but then there's no time to do anything about it. So by the time people wake up in a city, that city is almost about to be lost to multiculturalism. And the thing that I kind of want to push with people is that we need to do more. We need to build a community. And one of the sad things about the event today was I felt the event today was, to draw an analogy, it was a bit like a burning hot bonfire on a cold night. It was really warm, there was loads of energy, but when that bonfire burns out, you're cold again. The energy's just dissipated. It doesn't warm the night forever. When it stops burning, it's gone. And I felt that was a bit like this demo. All these people are going to go home and there's no organization, there's no community, there's nothing to bind them together. And all that energy and that palpable buzz that you felt surrounded by people like you, who understand you, that want to talk about the same things you want to talk about, that have got the same hopes and fears and goals, it's all just gone. And
there's
I
no
really...
solution. And I mean that in the nicest sense of the word. You haven't set out a plan of how we're going to achieve an end here, right? How we're going to conquer the corruptness of the politicians. I mean, it's all right sat there in Parliament Square, pointing over and saying, they're the problem, rah. What we need is rah, then everybody go home and then we'll do nothing. What I would rather is listen to somebody who's not so great at speaking, that then says, here's what we're going to do. We'll all join in. We'll start there. Here's the plan. We'll work it to this direction. And hopefully, with a bit of luck, we'll wake enough people up and we can make things happen. We'll do it in a tidy, we'll do it in a political, we'll do it in a legal sense. We will push back on all this sort of different stuff and we'll point out when there's wrong. But just, I went to the Tommy event early doors and the power that was there, the people, and it was great and all the rest of it. But you come away thinking, now what do we do in the period between this and the next Tommy event? And there it is. But well,
look, yeah. But the thing is, I feel sort of like a little bit of a hypocrite saying this, but I had a really good time, and I've always sort of criticized these events for being a bit of a jolly. You know, I got down to London for about 9 on the train. I met my friends. We went for a bit of breakfast. We wandered down to the gathering point. Everyone had a few beers. I had a big can of Red Bull. We all chatted. People sang songs. We walked up to Parliament Square. There was entertainment. And I looked up under the bit, obviously, where they told me to go. I was sort of enjoying it. And I can see how these events, if there's nothing to bind people together at the end, people have a jolly, they go home and they look forward to the next one in 2 or 3 months. And I've often said this, if Tommy said to all those people, right, there's 10,000 of us here. Now, 10,000 is 100 times 100. So if we got 100 people in 100 towns or cities, and all those people went to their nearest local point, handed out leaflets local to them, and built a community in their own town or city, you'd have a network. And that's kind of what we were trying to build.
Like Islam does. Islam will go out and it will meet non-Islamic people and hand out leaflets and tell them why they should be joining. And they'll be very persuasive. We don't, when we get home, we leave it at that because we don't want to upset the people around us, because we don't want to be ousted from the community as, I don't know, bigots, racists, homophobes, all the rest of the names you get called. I went the other way. I didn't give a fuck. And because I didn't give a shit, yeah, people are a bit quiet to start with, but now they're not. And they'll come up and shake your hand and stuff, but they have to see it for themselves. Now, what we were talking about earlier on really is the basis of acceleration, isn't it? I hope that Labour would get in because it would wake people up quicker than if Conservatives got in doing a slow death. That was my way of looking at things. But when people wake up and they're like you say, a couple of minutes to midnight, and the people that they want to, I don't know, fight against, and I mean that in the moral standard, right, or political, are so entrenched, so professional, so well set up, that if you come in 2 minutes to midnight, you're not going to achieve anything. They're going to win anyway. So we are, at this point, probably stuffed. And that worries me.
It worries me, but there is hope, okay? And where I find hope, people might find this interesting. And I'm going to give 2 real-world examples. First, there's Irania in South Africa. And South Africa is a completely failed state. It's collapsing at such a rapid rate. But a group of plucky people decided to create their own town out in the middle of nowhere, And they've built a paradise. They've built a homogenous community for the Boers with its own hospital, its own school, its own community centre, with people with jobs. They farm, they grow their own food, and it's the perfect society. And in America, there are now people buying up land in the Ozarks, and so many nationalist families have moved there that they outnumber the people who lived there before. And they're going to vote their own people into positions where they're the town mayor, where they're the town sheriff, where they're the local school governor. The fact is, Muslims gained power. Not just, it's a really convenient thing to say, Muslims gained power because traitorous politicians gave it to them. No, they were smart. They clustered together. They spent money with their cousins and their brothers and their distant relatives rather than with white people. They put up their own community centres, their own shops. They clustered together, built a community. And from that, they gained strength. And white people are often so hesitant to think outside the box. They're still playing the age-old game of, let's keep standing in elections, and if we get 1% at this general election and 2% at the next and 6% at the next, and we keep growing like that, in 40 years we'll have power. Well, we don't have 40 years left. By around 2060, it's going to be game over. You know, we have to start thinking outside the box. And that's why what we're doing, rather than raising money and just getting risable votes at elections, we're raising money for the families of political prisoners. We're out doing homeless outreaches. We're doing community politics like litter picks and park cleanups. We're helping people improve their lot in life to build a genuine community. And that's why we had a wonderful conference last weekend. Room was completely packed, sold out, 180 people there, a whole room for mums and small children, because we believe in that. And that's something that's real progress. And I think that people need to start looking outside the old, well, you know, if we get 1% more every 5 years, we'll eventually win it, because that's never worked out. And if the money, the millions of pounds that's been ploughed into these parliamentary elections, was actually put into buying us land, like the Woodlander Initiative, I can't recommend that enough. You know, buying land, buying property, clustering together and building an actual place where we can gather, where we've got somewhere for our people. I think that's a really good idea. And there's lots of alternatives that we can pursue. I mean, somebody in the chat has kindly said, I helped her with her CV, and that's a service I do for free. People write to me and say, look, I'm having a bit of problem getting a job. They send me their CV. I relay it out for them. I edit them. I put it in a professional thing. And then if they need a bit of extra help, I do interview techniques with them on the phone for an hour or so. I don't charge a penny for that. It's part of something we do as the PA community, something I do personally. And we do that to help improve our people's chances in our lives. And for too long, nationalists have viewed the battle of nationalism on this big macro level, like we've got to take Parliament and change it from the top down. We're saying, why don't we help people from the bottom up? Because if we work at the micro level and we make enough micro changes, they're all like tiny little brush strokes on a painting. And the more brush strokes you change, eventually the whole picture changes.
Indeed. And I'm all for that. Anything that will actually be different, because what we've tried hasn't worked in the past. So we've got to try something different, the way I look at it. Anyway, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Because I know you've had a busy
Only one thing. There's only one thing. I would love to. I really, really enjoyed coming on with you, Rev. You know I do. And I like these little chats. I am really tired because I've been up since before 5. So I am looking forward to getting a shower. But I will just ask people this. If they value my work, I'm not going to ask for money, by the way. I'm not going to ask for money. It would just make my day if people sub me on BitChute, Odyssey and Rumble and help me rebuild, because I lost so many subscribers when I was booted off YouTube. And I'm still doing those videos. I'm still doing, you know, informative podcasts. I've got a great live stream coming out on Sunday where I'm breaking down the recent Hope Not Hate documentary and showing the bits where I think they're not telling the truth. I can't say they're lying, I'm not going to libel anyone, but where I think they're being disingenuous, and I still do all that. And if you guys can sub me, if you can share videos like my latest one about the horrible death of Natalie Schotter, let's get the message out there. There's still so many content creators trapped on those smaller platforms, and we do need your help. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means a great deal to us. And that's just a little sort of plea to your audience. If we can
get some links in the chat, that would be great, because people can then come on and have a look. So we've got Manny Cinder unsubscribed. Right, I don't know if he's unsubscribed or been unsubscribed, or he has unsubscribed. Whatever, I don't know. Anyway, there it is. Look, Mark, I will let you get on. Thanks for coming on and telling us all about that, because it's interesting. And the very fact that you came on, you've been fair, and you haven't run him down or anything like that.
No, in fact, I've invited him round for Sunday dinner. And I've got to tell you, when my wife cooks a chicken, she actually separates the skin from the chicken and creates a garlic, butter, and lemon rub that goes between the flesh and the skin. Now, if you're turning that down, Tommy, you're definitely a madman.
Mad. Insanity. Yes, I would agree.
You're welcome for Sunday dinner as well, Simon, obviously. If you're ever in my area,
yeah, if I'm ever up that way, I will, but I don't get out much. Anyway, but thanks for the offer. Anyway, Mark,
thank you so much.
And
have a nice evening.
All right.
Thank you to your wonderful audience. Thank you and good night, everyone.
No worries, mate.